Hello and welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us again today for the second of 6 sessions of the JCoR SDG Lab, which is a collective response from the JCoR community to the conference that has just concluded at the United Nations, which was the high-level political forum on sustainable development. And as part of this conference, about 40 governments from different parts of the world utilized the opportunity to present progress reports on their work toward achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. And for those who may not be familiar, the Sustainable Development Goals are a 17-part agenda for the entire United Nations system to move toward their basic needs and rights met. And so today, we will take as the theme of our sharing and our discussion one of the 17 parts of this agenda, which is one of the Sustainable Development Goals. And the goal for today is goal number 2, which is hunger and to support sustainable agriculture. And so we will have the pleasure of hearing from several members of the global community of Catholic religious sisters, brothers, priests, and their partners in mission. And if you affiliations of the various speakers from whom we will hear today. And I invite you to consider as you listen, if you have any questions or comments that you might like to share at the conclusion of the sharing from our speakers. I believe we will have some time for interaction and exchange at the end. Before our speakers begin, I will share a short video which offers a little bit of context for us about the current state of hunger in the world and some of the global dynamics that dictate why we are experiencing that challenge on a global level.
Right now, there is a hunger crisis in nearly 90 countries. Food shortages and the skyrocketing price of fuel and fertilizer mean tens of millions of families are facing starvation and poor farmers cannot plant their crops. Women and girls who often eat last and least are simply not getting enough food. Pregnant women experience miscarriages, and mothers struggle to nurse, while babies and young girls don't get the nutrients they need for proper development. The causes of hunger are many and complicated, but we can stop it. Let's look at how we got here, why this hunger crisis is so urgent or widespread. In the past decade, many regions of the world faced extreme drought and the effects of climate change. But severe famines were not as devastating as before. Then, in 2020, the world was dealt a massive blow. Within months, as many as 161 million more people were facing hunger, many of them women and girls. This number equates to half the current population of the United States. As if that wasn't enough. In February 2022, war broke out between two of the most important suppliers of food to the world. With Russian and Ukrainian farming and food production disrupted, nearly 30% of the world's grain supply was cut off. The resulting disruption of trade on Russian exports like fertilizer and fuel has caused the cost of food to soar, creating shockwaves felt thousands of miles away. For many countries, this has been the breaking point. Conflict, the economic impact of COVID-19, and now escalating costs have made growing or accessing nutritious food nearly impossible for millions of people in poverty. Today, 345 million people are considered high risk for severe malnutrition. To put it in perspective, that's the entire population of the United States and two outbreak of COVID-19. Responding to those facing extreme hunger is critical. So is helping people on the cusp of malnutrition grow more food now to feed their families and communities. Even if the war in Ukraine ends today, it could take at least 3 years for food supplies to return to normal levels and prices. CARE is fighting the hunger crisis in every way possible, from immediate food and nutritional assistance for people who could starve to helping poor farmers grow more food right away. Humanitarian assistance of food rations, cash assistance, and treatment for malnutrition is saving lives. Through climate-smart agriculture, efficient use of fertilizers, and renewable energy sources for irrigation and food storage, CARE is helping farmers make sure there is a harvest. Combating this crisis will take everyone. CARE is making sure that governments are doing their part to prevent extreme hunger and grow more food for the future. Because without food, there is no future. As you sit down to dinner tonight, or pack a lunch for your child, please think about the millions of people who don't know where their next meal will come from, or when they had their last. You have the power to support a well-fed future for all. Food equals future.
So with that introduction, I will now invite our first speaker to engage in sharing with us. And today, our first speaker from whom we will have the pleasure of learning will be Sister Anastasia Mbatha, who is a member of the Institute of the Blessed Virgin Mary, Loreto Generalit, and she will be speaking to us about hunger and addressing the issue of hunger in Kenya. So, Sister Anastasia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Teresa. Hello, everyone. I hope we are all well and that we've been able to have some food today. Thank you for that clip that ended by telling us that food equals future, but I feel like adding it there that food also equals life, because we can't survive really without food. I hope I am audible enough. As mentioned by Teresa, I am Sister Anastasia. I am a member of the Institute of the Blessed Virgin Mary, currently in Kenya. So I'll be speaking issues concerning us as Kenyans and where we are with hunger. The reason why I have interest with this SDG, it's because personally I feel it is something that is achievable. As much as a lot needs to be done, I am deeply convinced that this can be achieved. So I'll start by just mentioning what I have read about this SDG and what it is, just for the sake of reminding ourselves that this is the goal 2 of SDGs, and it's about creating a world free of hunger by 2030. It seeks for sustainable solutions to end hunger in all its forms and achieve food security. The aim is to ensure that everyone has enough good quality food and lead healthy life. Achieving this goal will require better access to food and the widespread promotion of sustainable agriculture. This entails improving the productivity and incomes of small-scale farmers by promoting equal access to land, technology and markets, sustainable food production systems, and resilient agricultural practices. It also requires increased investments through international cooperation to reinforce the productivity capacity of agriculture in developing countries. I mentioned earlier that I have a passion for this particular SDG. I am passionately interested in this sustainable development goal because I strongly believe when people have food and are healthy, the rest of the things in a country fall in place. It means less people visiting hospital, less people dropping out of school, less child labor, less crime, less stressed society, and more productive people in all sectors of developing the country. And therefore, my sharing will majorly be based on experience, personal reflections and insights, because I interact a lot with local people, with local markets, and I have very strong conviction that it is possible to achieve zero hunger. And so I was looking at it and asking myself, so what causes hunger? And basically there's one cause of hunger, which is lack of food. And that makes me look at what causes food, and especially in our country, what causes lack of food. And our country, Kenya, being highly populated country with so many unemployed people, again, I believe when people are well equipped, we can achieve this. But is it achievable in then how far has it been achieved? I personally believe that very little has been achieved in this area. So there's so many causes of lack of food, but I decided just to look at 3 that I feel if they were addressed well, we would be far, or we would have achieved so much. And therefore, I look at lack of agricultural education. We have so many people in our country who have no idea of how they can grow even vegetables outside their house, even how they can grow some small few things here and there to keep their families, which for me, I find it a little bit discouraging. And probably it's not the wish of this person. They have never had somebody educating them. And therefore, this is a call for me if so much can be done. As I sit as a sister and as I sit here, thank God I am a teacher and I talk a lot to children about agriculture, even planting. And I'm very happy that in our system, now we are able to teach agriculture, a bit of it, give basics to children. Because I believe if people learn and they create passion for agriculture, for planting, for growing things, for keeping animals, even in school now, I live in the compound and I can see some chicken there because children are doing agriculture and they are rearing chicken. They have done a lot of planting of crops here and there. And that tells me these children will grow with passion for agriculture. At the same time, I listen to some children and I talk to them just to hear where their passion with agriculture is, and they look at it like, no, that is not my area. It's like it's not a good thing to do. So personally, I feel when people are well educated about agriculture and good farming practices, health, pest control, local food production and all that. Is somebody asking a question or?
No, continue, Sister Anastasia.
So I believe that if people get agricultural education, even basics, that people in their local living, they can be able to grow food that can sustain their families, even if it's not a commercial thing. I personally believe that can be, and that gives me a challenge as a sister. How am I reaching out to people? And as I said, in my capacity as a teacher, I'm doing a lot of sensitization to children. I talk to them a lot about agriculture. I do a lot of farming personally, just to even for my sake, because I love it and I encourage the children as well to do it. I do a lot of planting of vegetables, of food around any small land I get. I feel like just planting something. So I wish every Kenyan had that passion, other than looking for white collar jobs, expecting jobs from offices and all that, being able to plant, to make sure that their families are well catered for, they have food. For me, that would be something. But again, where are we with this sensitization? That is where my big question comes. I would be doing it where I am, but I would wish to challenge the government, if given a chance, that we have as much, we be a bit vigorous in sensitizing people about agriculture. It is also very discouraging from our side that the very government is the one that will give us bad fertilizer that will not grow things. That was quite discouraging for Kenyans. And so that is one thing that our young people, today is a day of demonstrations. We are not even in school, because these are some of the things the young people are fighting, good governance that will lead to good life, better life. So there are also people, due to cultural influence, they are inclined into one way of farming, which is pastoralist, keeping animals. And these are people who will depend on this food. They will either eat meat or milk, or sometimes blood, feeding on protein, which is not a balanced diet. So if these people were helped to understand there are other foods that are very important for the body, they would grow some vegetables. Much as they're moving from one place to the other, they would find a way of growing some other food, so that they're not only relying on protein alone, eating only meat, milk, and we have a big number of Kenyans who are pastoralists, and that is the only food they feed. So I strongly believe if we had education on agriculture in small scales and in large scale, a lot would be achieved. Just in my own checking, I check even with the people I work with about SDGs and how much they know about them. Some of them have no idea. And that shocks me. How will we achieve this if people do not know? And who is supposed to make people know about these SDGs? You know, I'm new in this. I'm very new. I think this is my 3rd session. And the kind of zeal, it has awakened some fire in me that I feel I like we've ignored so much. So who is supposed to make people know these things? Is it the government? Who is supposed to do it? But definitely the government. And what are we doing? What are we doing to educate people, to make people understand how useful it is just to have some small farm next to you there? So that really gives me a challenge, and I'm really thinking about it seriously on how do we sensitize people. Like where I am, when I realize that the people I'm living with here, I'm working with, have no idea, I decided to make it a move, really, to let people understand this is what we are working towards. And in your small houses where you live at home, because Kenya has land, many people have big pieces of land here in Kenya. Why can't you plant? Why can't you do farming? Why can't you buy 3 goats, keep them, let them start growing? Why can't you keep 2 cows? They will keep growing. Why can't you do some farming? So for me, education, agricultural education remains key for me if we have to achieve this goal. People need to be sensitized. People need to be educated to understand the importance of growing something small for yourself, and if able, grow even much so that you can share with neighbors and even outside country. So that is one thing that really I feel needs a lot, sensitizing, educating people on good farming practices, agricultural practices, and also draining that idea that agriculture is punishment. I'll just give this is an experience that I had with my people here. And one time I told them, because during holiday time, there's no much work, children are at home. I said, today we'll be doing farming. We have a small shamba here. We'll be doing planting. And some of them are looking at it like, why is sister punishing us? You know? And I'm doing with them, and they're like, why is sister punishing us? You know, we are not supposed to be farming. Even where we come from, we pay people to farm. I said, really? So for me, that shocked me, you know, and these are men saying that. So I think we have a lot in Kenya to do. This is an awakening call, and I really appreciate being part of this. I will really campaign for this because I know it is achievable. So I also looked at lack of water. We can give people education, yes. We can sensitize people, yes. But where are they going to get water from? Because in Kenya, most of the land in Kenya is very dry, including where I come from. It's very dry. So we only rely on rain water, and sometimes the rain is not very stable. It rains today, tomorrow it doesn't rain. So educating people is one thing, but again, getting water and rain to plant is another thing. So I feel the government can do something. If you drill boreholes for people and you provide water and educate them, these people will get food for themselves. That is one thing I believe. Because I've seen people during rain, everybody is busy in their farm just because it is raining, and everybody is planting, is farming, and people are very busy and people are very peaceful because they're working. But if there's no food, there's no rain, it is very dry, we don't blame people. So this is a call to the government, to people who can help, at least to get what. If I always believe in Kenya, if we had a borehole for every 10 homesteads, a borehole that can provide water for 10 or even 20, at least adequate water, people can plant food for themselves, people can sustain themselves through farming. So that is something that lack of rain is something that we may not control because that is God's doing. But again, we need to plant many trees. We need to take care of the environment so that it can bring rain. Because sometimes we have also misused, you know, the environment. We have cut so many trees without planting. So that is also another campaign. Personally, have done it from where I'm sitting from. I'm surrounded by so many trees. Like every child has to plant a tree. And for my staff, everybody who has a birthday, you have to plant a tree. So every year somebody is planting a tree. Every year somebody is planting a tree. And we have made it a forest. So I'm like challenging myself from where I'm sitting. Yes, we can do that. But who else can do it? That is my biggest question as I deal with this. Who else can do it? Who else can help in circulating this information, in sensitizing people, in talking to people about taking care of the earth so that it can take care of us? Because if we cut down all the trees, if we don't take care of the earth, it's going to remain as dry. So water is a big challenge in Kenya. I know people try, leaders try, but a lot can be done. A lot can be done. So lack of water for me is a big challenge. How I wish every home had water that can help them in farming. Another thing that remains a dilemma is lack of roads. There are places in Kenya where there's a lot of food, and other places people are dying simply because we cannot access this food. This food cannot be transported. During the month of May, we were experiencing floods. And because the roads were closed and the vehicles couldn't pass, the cost of food went very high in some places, especially in Mombasa where I live, because there were no vehicles crossing over. That is a dilemma for me. That's a dilemma that there's so much food, there's so much rain, yet people are not getting food. So again, that is the government, a call for government, that if we had adequate roads, good transport, many parts of the country, much as they're buying, but they would be buying it at an affordable rate where you're not feeling it's too expensive and you prefer to pay school fees than buying food. So there's so much that can be done so that people can get food. I feel so bad when some parts of the country have food and other parts of the country there's no food, simply because we can't reach out, we can't get that food transported to the areas that need food. A big number of Kenyans rely on buying food from the shops, literally every food, from vegetables to flour to everything, relying on the shops. And the cost of this food keeps fluctuating because of different factors, as I've mentioned some of them. So this is something that needs to be looked at seriously and addressed so that people get to make their own food where they live. To achieve this sustainable development goal in Kenya, a lot of sensitization needs to be done. Out of curiosity, I'd mentioned that I did a check of how people, understand, know the goals. And I realized people need a lot of sensitization. We need to do so much. So I believe that, as I conclude, I believe that when a country has food, when people in a particular country have food and they're contented, then we will not have wars or people going on the road. Like now, everybody today is not a working day in Kenya. Young people are all over in the road because they're fighting for their rights, which is okay. They're fighting for good governance, for good leadership, corruption and all that. So if everybody was working, we had food, everybody had something, I don't think people would be wasting a whole day of working, on the roads. That is affecting the economy of the country in one way or the other. As much as we are saying on this side, we are fighting for the rights of the country, and on the other side, we're also affecting the economy of the very country. So I believe that if we address the issue of hunger, all the SDGs are very important, but for me, passionately, I feel if we address this issue of hunger, so many other things, we will not have poverty, because if people have food, they have gone to school, they're able to afford school, a lot will be solved when we address the issue of hunger. When I was preparing my speech, I was said to prepare it for 12 minutes. So I had to prepare just that. And I would wish to give maybe time for questions, or anybody would like me to clarify anything, then I would be glad to do that.
Thank you very much, Sister Anastasia, and I hope we will have time to come back for a question and discussion at the end. So if anyone has a question, please keep it or put it in the chat box now, and if we can, we will return to it. Next, we will hear via a short video message We will hear from Father Uzochukwu Ohanele, who is a Claretian missionary and who will share with us about his experience and observations related to hunger and agriculture in South Africa.
Greetings and compliments of the day. My name is Father Ozo Ohanele, CMF, a Claretian missionary working in the Archdiocese of Johannesburg in South Africa. My apologies, I will not be able to meet up with the upcoming meeting. Hence, Teresa has asked me to make this video clip to make a brief presentation. The projects I'm doing here with emphasis on the SDG to feeding the poor, solidarity with the poor. We give food parcels to the less fortunate families, prepare warm meals, and juice, warm soup and bread. Just like by this coming Thursday also, from one of our donors, we've been able to get something to give also to a soup kitchen for the community in honor of the Mandela Day. So the SDGs connected to the projects of the 70 of the goals adopted by the UN in 2015, the SDGs connected to these projects is the target is SDG 2, zero hunger, food security projects. The social transformation witnessed through this ministry. One is decrease in malnutrition and improved health. 2, better education with children focusing more in their studies. 3, reduce poverty with nutritious feeding. People are less likely to be trapped in poverty. Within this period, we do this. We've witnessed some challenges. Of course, the environment where I'm working is mostly middle class people and the elderly and the young ones. So the challenges we continue to have is many unemployed youth. Most of them are also involved with substances, substance abuse, alcohol abuse, and all that, which sometimes make them not to be much serious in pursuing their goals. And they are just without much effort to secure job because they are not qualified. Most of them are not qualified, no education, and they were school dropouts. Our future plan for the SDG awareness and integration. The strategies and actions, we intend to build stronger collaboration and partnership with the Archdiocese in their program, such as the Archdiocese meeting of families. It is an annual event. Luckily, I did attend for the first time last month since its inception 3 years ago. the integration plans to integrate the SDGs into other SDGs into my existing projects. I plan to build closer relationship with the Justice and Peace Department of the Archdiocese of Johannesburg in areas of climate action, SDG 13, gender equality, SDG 5. Collaboration also through existing solidarities such as St. Vincent de Paul, which is in my church. We intend to carry out enlightenment program in the parish of my assignments. I intend to, through this medium, attract others to join in the vision of the parish towards reaching out to the needy. So these, for now, are some of the work we do, and we hope that this can give a little picture of what I'm doing here. Thank you.
And though Father Uzo is not with us in the room at this moment, we give our thanks to him for offering his observations and also for sharing his plans to further integrate the Sustainable Development Goals into the ministries in which he is already engaged there in South Africa. Next, we will have the pleasure of hearing from Father Roque Bikoro Eyaga Mokui, who is also a member of the Claretian Missionaries, but he is coming to us from Equatorial Guinea and will be offering his observations and experience from that part of the African continent. So, Father Roque, you have the floor.
Good afternoon to everybody. I'm happy to be here, and I want to focus on the second goal, even if it's very related with the first goal, which is to end poverty. I think that these two goals are very related because it's a consequence of the other. The sound is not good. I will focus on the comparison of the different goals and what we are doing. And also to see the progress that we are doing and we still have to do, not only as Claretians, but as a church in general. There are some initiatives. So with regard to the positive aspect, I think that the government has implemented various policies to reduce poverty and improve the living condition of populations. There is the sound is not good. The reduction of extreme poverty through social and economic assistance programs, and it's very important to improve our agriculture. So in this sense, we value what the government has done in order to have water, because that helps agriculture and also to improve our quality of life. And this is not only in the big areas, and also in the sometimes the peripheries stays at the margin. There are also programs of school feeding programs, but that is a program only for the big towns of this country. Then a resilience to food crisis. The country has developed strategies to strengthen community resilience to food and climate crisis through crop diversification and sustainable natural resource management. So those are small initiatives that help we recognize also that there is a progress and there is a commitment with the sustainable development. There are some initiatives as specific programs for the sustainable development, and that sometimes that is only a theory and the practice is more difficult. And that is important. The participation in international organizations, that is very important, because it's also important, the support for multilateralism. So now we can go to other more critical aspects. There are challenges that we face all the time, and our mission as Claretians is trying to respond to that. We don't plan these strategies to respond to this situation, and there are doubts with regard to the policies that the government is putting into practice. And also there is a lack of transparency, data and transparency. We need clear and up-to-date data, because that is crucial for assessing the impact of the policies. Then another critical aspect is the inclusion of civil society. There is no explicit mention of the participation and role of civil society in the implementation and monitoring of the goals. The inclusion of multiple actors and perspectives in the process can strengthen the effectiveness and legitimacy of development initiatives. Also, we recognize that long-term sustainability is essential to ensure that the progress achieved is sustainable over the long term and does not depend exclusively on external resources or economical fluctuations. While the report of the country highlights significant progress and shows a clear commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals, it could also improve in terms of clarity in the data presented, strategies to address persistent challenges, and the inclusion of all relevant stakeholders in the sustainable development process. And that's a concern. We will delve into a more detailed critique and expanded comments for each of the Sustainable Development Goals to show our situation in Equatorial Guinea. And at the end, we will consider the role of the church. With regard to the goal 2, zero hunger, the long-term food security, although school feeding programs are implemented and sustainable agriculture is promoted, it is crucial to address long-term food security. There are few strategies to address vulnerability. To face the shocks that could affect food production. Also, the nutritional quality, despite the efforts in food programs, there are challenges that persist in improving the nutritional quality of the food available to the population. Are there agriculture practices that promote more nutritious and sustainable crops being integrated? That is a huge question. Because that is very important, so that agriculture can help our development. And also in the families, it's not only something that depends on the government action. With regard to this point, as I've already said, we have a culture that is based on agriculture. So in the past, there was a resilience to food crisis. We, as Claretians, also had a lot of land to plant coffee, cocoa, etc. But now it's more difficult, and there are no initiatives to grow in that we have a very generous nature in our country, but it is difficult to improve our agriculture or to promote a sustainable agriculture. So that this could be, would help our development. So the goal number 2 is to reach zero hunger. In our context, the action of the church could be very important. So the church hasn't done nearly anything. As we say, we look to the future. We would like to have new projects we would like to improve the production of coffee and cocoa, and we would like to have a plan of agriculture and other cultivations like banana, etc. We have a program of nutrition. We have a social kitchen also in the parish, but that it's more for old people. Some of them don't need to receive food, but we try to reach those who are alone, etc. And also that kitchen, we also try to reach and go to those who are alone at home. Even if the church can have a meaningful role, it's important to have a holistic approach and to be in relation with the different organizations. So, and also with regard to the first goal, that is to end poverty, it's something that we are trying to do. Because it has deep roots. What we need, it's a good education in order to go back to our roots, because the Claretians, when they arrived here, they began building churches and chapels. And we were involved in schools and schools ministry. So with regard to goal number 2, zero hunger, that can create so difficult situations in the society. What happens is that if the youth don't eat, they will not go to school and they will do other things. That's why they don't have to eat. And that's why we have a ministry in the schools in order to help them to have a profession in order to have a work later on. And if we can fight against poverty and hunger in our communities, that would be essential. That is mainly my presentation. If you have a question, the sound many times was quite difficult.
Thank you very much, Father Roque. And you have integrated several different aspects of the challenges and possible effects related to hunger and nutrition. And I think I even heard a similarity to something that Sister Anastasia shared regarding perhaps the lack of sensitization or education related to the importance of nutrition as a guide and as a way of creating a strategy for creating a diverse group of crops that can provide for good nutrition. And I am also appreciating your analysis of the role of the church, as well as the importance on the side of government of really opening the work of sustainable development to civil society to include that contribution, what the church is doing now through the programs you mentioned, but also in the potential that you see for further contribution in the future. So thank you very much for your sharing and for your work. And so now we have been to East Africa, to Southern Africa, and to Central West Africa. And so finally, we will move to another continent altogether, as our final speaker for today will be one more Claretian, Father Norbe Tapiero, who will speak to us about SDG number 2 in Colombia. Father Norbe, you have the floor.
Good morning, everybody. From Medellin, a rural area. I am here based in this rural area where we have agriculture. So it's very related with my presentation. I will share my presentation on the screen. So I am a Claretian missionary from the province of Colombia, and I will talk to you about zero hunger. That is the second goal here in Colombia, trying to see the report of Colombia and reading that voluntary national review. I could see many challenges. One of the main challenges that we have here in Colombia is that no one can starve to death, so that they all can have a good food. 60%, 66% of the territory is a non-interconnected zone, which represents significant challenges in remote areas to sustainable increase agriculture production. Because we have three very diverse climates, and we could produce a lot, but the lands are in the hands of a small group. In relation to climate change, food security in countries like Colombia could face even greater challenges. For example, rising temperatures, changes in precipitation patterns, extreme weather events that are significantly impacting agriculture production, making it difficult to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. So it is therefore important to promote public policies to mitigate climate change. For example, here in our area, we had floods that affected many plantations. You can see there the floods, the rains, and how they can affect our crops. And then the deforestation after the peace agreement between the government and the FARC guerrillas, but continues to advance due to territorial disputes. There was an agreement and the peace was agreed, but that meant also a deforestation after that peace agreement, because before the guerrillas helped in some way people and their crops, their work with animals. Now, afterwards, there is a huge deforestation. Other challenges is to weak state capacity at the local level, land grabbing and the transformation of land used for agriculture activities such as cattle ranching have contributed to this problem, but also extractivism such as oil and mining exploitation. With the church, we have said no to mining exploitation because we know that with oil and mining exploitation, that means hunger for the future. So we tried to fight against that. On the other hand, the harmonious integration between or among the different goals requires strong institutions and the promotion of peace and justice. Hunger and food insecurity, as Sister said, can lead to political stability, conflict, and war, because people fight in order for different reasons, but then that creates hunger, and the other way around. So we have been also affected for the different conflict of different groups. Hunger is used as a tool in conflicts, depriving opponents of food by destroying stockpiles, cutting supplies, and attacking farmers, among others. Here, many people are displaced and they are in areas that are protected, and the government want them to leave those areas. But if so, they will not have land. So that is a challenge that the government has in this moment to give them a land. Although institutions have been strengthened and the intensity of the conflict has been reduced, historically affected regions still face vulnerabilities such as remote regions without access roads. And these are the regions that are affected by the conflict and are abandoned by the state, and that has to be changed to reach those territories that suffered more from violence. Another challenge is to have different alliances. For example, investment in infrastructure for agricultural development, so that people can send and receive their products. Also technology, a capacity building, and trade that can also help to make climate change more resilient. Hunger affects indigenous and Afro-descendant populations. Here, in where we are, we can see displaced people begging to eat, to have something, because they have been displaced from their regions. So that is a challenge that there are in some remote regions. There is the case of La Guajira that stands out because poverty, malnutrition, and infant mortality rates significantly exceed the national average. That is the region of La Guajira. It's near the sea, the Caribbean Sea. Hunger is also faced by vulnerable groups, such as victims of armed conflicts and migrants, those coming from Venezuela, who also suffered from hunger. And the pandemic also had an impact on food insecurity and hunger. And that impacted on the poorest and most vulnerable of our society. Here you have a map with the statistic of the different regions that suffered from food insecurity. The most affected departments are La Guajira, with the 50%, then Sucre, 45%, then Vichada, 40%, Magdalena, 40%, and Vichada, okay? Guaviare, 37, and Atlántico, 36. So they have a quite high level of food insecurity. This analysis that was prepared by Dane provides key evidence that reveals the distance that we have from achieving the second goal, zero hunger. In coastal and rural areas or hard to reach areas, the states the state and organizational intervention is often insufficient or non-existent, and these gray zones lack adequate access to nutrition food, assistance programs, and productive development. So they don't have roads and they suffer from malnutrition. And which are the challenges to overcome hunger? So the government says Colombia wants to produce a lot of food. That is the challenge of our government, to produce food. So there is a transition from an approach that just only helps to initiatives that empower communities and promote their self-sufficiency and food production. La Guajira is a department that has been prioritized by the national government, where the special mechanism to monitor and evaluate public policies was launched to promote actions related to access to water, mobility, and housing. And we have community kitchens, or to help them in order to have a decent housing. We need also policies that promote transparency, community participation, a differentiated territorial approach, a coordination among the different sectors, food self-sufficiency and adaptation to local context in order to overcome the structural causes of hungers in Colombia. We know that there are elements such as corruption that don't allow those goals to be reached. And that it doesn't help to, those structural problems don't help to reach the goal. And also, we need to have an access to financial resources and decent employment opportunities, and that people has the ability to invest in their education and health. As the father said, that education is very important in order to have people that have food. The problem we have here in Colombia, the youth, they used to go to the cities, and in the rural areas, only the old people stay. So the challenge is that young people can study in order to develop our agriculture. Another important topic is the land reform, that from the peace agreement, it was an important issue, so that people can have credits and can produce. And after the implementation of that agreement, the government committed to buy 3,000 hectares to give to poor people, but for the moment they have done little, very little. 150 from 3,000, so very little. Another issue is a reform in the pension system, so that old people can have a good food. So people who are older than 85 receive a bonus for nutrition. Those are some policies that are being done in Colombia. We, as Claricians, we have created a social kitchen that was Father Hector Guzman, a priest and musician at the same time, that was very committed and engaged with poor. And he began with that kitchen. And we have that text from the gospel, give them something to eat. And we have a group, men and women, that contribute from Tuesday to Friday with that. And that's our way of our contribution as Clarician to that goal. So the promotion of solidarity to combat hunger, the delivery of markets to people in situations of hunger and malnutrition. Here you can see some old people also. So the promotion of solidarity canteens for the most vulnerable people in order to offer lunch. And we want to contribute to the zero hunger, especially for people and poor people and people in vulnerable situations all during the year. And we finance that with the solidarity of the community. People offer food and we go to take it. And also there are some benefactors who offer a small amount of money that help us for that canteen. So it's solidarity and other Claricians also from the United States that help us with the canteen. Another proposal as Claricians that we are beginning is to create organic home gardens, because we have space for that in order to have a healthy and nutritious food. We have begun, as you can see here the pictures with old people, even so that they can use their free time in order to have their home gardens. That is our way of trying to reach the goal 2.4, that is to ensure sustainability of food production systems and implement resilient agriculture practices that increase productivity and production and contribute to the maintenance of ecosystems, strengthen resilience to climate change. Because for us, it is very important to be able of producing our own food and a healthy food. Here in Colombia, the government wants to put a tax on the food that is not healthy, but eventually it was not approved because there are strong interests that didn't allow that law to be approved. but it's our idea that it's important to help people to have a healthy food. So thank you very much. This is my presentation, and if you have questions, please let me know.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Father Norbe. And you really gave us excellent perspective from the background of the country and specific regions and populations who are especially at risk of hunger or food insecurity, bringing in, of course, the factors that are involved in creating that vulnerability. Whether it is having been displaced due to armed conflict or to being a migrant for another reason, as well as discrimination or grabbing of land by industrial interests, which has especially affected indigenous populations, and also naming that Afro-descendants and the older people in the community, the elders, are also especially vulnerable, and helping us to understand the dynamics of the country as a whole, as well as the beautiful projects that are being implemented by the Claretians in the form of the Comedor Solidario, and also in creating community gardens, which are mobilizing people to engage in providing nutritious food for themselves and for others in their community, which is, both education and practical self-assistance and community assistance. Truly excellent work. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. And so now we do, in fact, have time for some interaction. So if there are any questions that anyone in the group has, anyone who has been listening throughout the session and would like to bring a question or a comment in response to any of these presentations, I would like to invite you to raise your hand, which you may do physically with your camera on, if you have your camera on, or you can also do the digital hand, which you can find underneath more, the more button. You will see the option for raise hand, or on your screen, you may have a reactions button, and you may see raise hand within that. So there are a few different ways, but if you are interested in asking a question or contributing a comment, I welcome you to do that now. And I will go first to Sister Melba Vasquez Rodriguez. Melba?
Well, I didn't. Okay, I didn't know how to do with the hand. So, first of all, today it was excellent. I was a bit late today, but I really thank the sisters from the African countries. And really, if this world was more just, we wouldn't have hunger. We have so many things. Some things are thrown away while others don't have. So really, I am really touched. And I think that this sharing help ourselves to be better people. And I am really moved. It's very strong. We have sisters in Cameroon. I went there and I was touched because I felt that, I don't want to say how old I am, but it was like when I was little, I was a girl, and I realized that they had to develop. But at the same time, my own country has went back. So I want also to thank Father Nove for his presentation. It's beautiful. From Latin America, that we can have a critical analysis, and he has done it very well, because sometimes there are measures that are a compensation, and what is important to ask for policies of structural change. To me, that was the core of what you have shared, because it's true. What is important are the structural changes in order to advocate or to work in advocacy. We can do it everywhere, but I really admire the Claretian fathers that are so committed. Really, it's a call to commit myself to. Thank you.
Thank you, Melba. And next we will hear from Beth Blissman of the Loretto community in the United States. Beth?
Oh, thank you, Teresa. I think Susan actually had her hand up first. Susan Mwangi. Let's go to Africa and then come back to the US.
It's fine. Thank you very much. And I want to applaud all our presenters this moment for the good work. Mine is just affirming what Sister Anastasia has said in terms of working with the young minds to change the mindset, and especially if we are going to address the issue of hunger. Currently, looking at our Kenyan context, the average farmer is about 65 years old. And we see many people have gone, we are not enticed in the farming. And the question now is, how do we get back there? Because a huge generation has backed off from farming. And the older generation is aging, and therefore the need to have a different mindset. So maybe the question that I want to draw to Sister is, what are the attitudes that you are encountering as you bring in pulling the students to be involved in agriculture? And how do we break that kind of, normally it is a negative attitude because we associate farmers and poverty, farmers and no progress. How do we address such attitudes? Thank you.
Great. And we will take a few more comments and questions, and then we will go back to our panelists to respond. So now, Beth.
Thank you. Thank you, Teresa. And greetings. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Beth Blissman. I have the good fortune and blessing to currently serve as the United Nations representative for the US-based Loretto community. Our mother house is in the rolling farmland of Kentucky, in between the Midwest and the South in this country. And I've been the UN rep for 7 years now, and a co-member, a lay member of the Loretto community for 29 years. I've worked in higher education here in the US and helped co-found a sustainable agriculture program at a community college in Ohio. I'm also a trained permaculturist. So the topic today gets me very, very excited, as you can see from the chat. I'm putting in resources right and left. And I actually just wanted to comment on, I believe, Sister Franca's comment that she put in recently about the presence of genetically modified seed introduced to farmers, and especially in India has caused so many farmer suicides because farmers get mired in debt and cannot get out. And I know this happens in many countries across the global south. So I put in the best resource I know of in the response in the chat, which is the work of Indian physicist Vandana Shiva. Her headquarters organization is called Navdanya. That would be a wonderful partner and networking opportunity for us in JCoR to work with Vandana Shiva and her older sister, Meera, who's a medical doctor, who's kind of the one who got Vandana to turn her attention away from physics and science and towards hunger and solving the hunger crisis and the corporate capture of agriculture globally. I also wanted to mention quickly another resource. If we have time, we can look at the website together, perhaps. It's called ECHO, Ending Hunger Concerns Globally, or Ending Hunger Concerns Organization. I'll put the information in the chat. It is a very Christian evangelical organization located here in the United States, in Florida, of all places. My mother found it, may she rest in peace, when she went on a trip with her garden club. And this group has a seed bank. They take interns. They have created every biome in the world. They've recreated it in southern Florida to learn what grows and what works and how to integrate animals and do sustainable farming in every biome in the world where there is hunger. When I was there, which was over 10 years ago now, they were open to working with Catholic sisters and Catholic priests and Catholic brothers, but they're very into proselytizing and getting disciples for Christ, which, you know, many of us in the Loretto community are more concerned with helping people eat and solve hunger, whether they are Christian or not. So we're much more live and let live in our approach. But if you can stomach the evangelical perspective, it might be a very good place to go and do an internship or go and visit, because I think they will also give seeds to people who consider themselves missionaries. I'll do some more research on ECHO. And it depends on who the director is as well, who's more evangelical and less evangelical. But it is a fabulous place to learn if you're going to be here in the US. And I believe if you get an internship with them, they cover your room and your board while you're there, although I don't know about transportation. So that's what I know. Happy to answer questions and continue our beautiful conversation on this important SDG. Although I agree, they're all interconnected.
Yeah.
Thank you, Beth. And now we will hear from Sister Biddy Rose, who is in South Africa.
Thank you. I found today's session really quite amazing. I think the 4 speakers made me see not only the interconnectedness of the SDGs, but the wealth of the Catholic network. And this is my first experience of JCoR. Is there a follow-up process? Because to share best practices and to share, for example, with Anastasia, what skills programs has she done successfully in her school that we could use here? It's just quite amazing. So that's really a question to you, Teresa, about follow-up from this amazing SDG Lab this week. Thank you very much to the 4 people who spoke, and to Beth for your resources that you're offering us.
Excellent. And we have one more hand from Sister Margaret Morilli from Kenya and now in the United States.
Hello, good morning. I'm Margaret Marili, and as Teresa said, I'm from Kenya, and I want to thank all that have presented. I have learned a lot, and I was touched by my fellow Kenyan, Sister Anastasia Mbati, what she said, and I just wanted to make a comment and wondered like maybe some of these issues have a lot to do with us also looking at the systemic injustice that are ingrained in the policies that we have. For example, in our country, Kenya, as the very common person tries to teach and make children and the young people aware of what to do, there is a big issue of what we are calling the land policy, because that is our problem, as just 20% of Kenyan land, we are told, is arable, is the only arable land we have. The rest is semi-desert or desert, and therefore there is not enough land to maybe cultivate, produce enough food. But as we say, if there is water and what, we can do something. But even the little land that is arable, you are finding that most of the leaders have taken it, and so the other people don't have really access to that arable land. Sometimes, especially the leading group could have maybe an eighth of the land, the arable land, for a family or so, and the rest of the people are not having that land. So as we educate the young people, for sure, I believe there is need to rehaul the land policies to help people have access to that land. And thank God, now there is something called a new system of education, CBC, where the young people hopefully will be able to be helped to get in touch with the earth, to be able to produce food. And for example, the strikes going on now, we are trying to kind of handle and solve problems from the middle. And yet the origins of these problems are there, but we are experiencing the intense problems now. We need to go to the roots of where are these problems. So I'm just talking of land policy, helping the young people get in touch with the common and the earth, and also using that new curriculum, CBC, to help these young people become like other countries are talking about innovation, but our young people is like, get from the university and get the job. So when they come out, there's not that job. So we have to be on the street in order to get what we want. So the solution is not in that. We have to look at the root causes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Margaret. So now from the questions that were shared, we will return to our speakers for the day who may wish to respond. And to remind you, the questions that were raised were first about how best to stoke or to renew interest in agriculture, especially among young people, and to present, say, an alternate narrative to the common one, which is linking the idea of agriculture and the idea of poverty, how to separate those and to see agriculture in a more positive and inspiring way. And then secondly, a question about the level of awareness in your respective places about the challenges that are presented by genetically modified seeds, and how those seeds can threaten local seeds and local organisms, and also create dependence on the corporations that produce those seeds, because of course you need to buy them year after year. They do not naturally reproduce the way natural seeds do. And also just create dependence on foreign produce imports, especially if, you know, the popular modified seed of the day produces a crop that is particularly threatened or has a challenge in 1 year. such that it does not grow. So the question of awareness about those challenges, and then at the end, I will respond to the question from Biddy Rose about how we can continue to share good practices in this community. So from our speakers today, would anyone like to respond to these questions of renewing interest in agriculture and responding to challenges of genetically modified seeds?
Yes, Teresa, this is Anastasia. I would wish to just respond to the interest, and lucky enough, I'm dealing with young people and with the new system, CBC. And I'm very excited that CBC has brought in agriculture. And as my colleague has said from Kenya, agriculture is one thing that we had taken for granted, and many people have forgotten about it, even planting simple things, simple crops. And that is where we associated it with poverty, because we looked at agriculture and farming as a very low class work or something like that. Honestly, just from experience, when I'm teaching children and I talk to them about agriculture, I don't teach agriculture, but I talk to them about it so that they get interest. And that is one way of creating interest for learners. I've tried to even talk to the teachers so that they create interest with the children through talking to them. And I tell them, my father was a farmer and I did a lot of farming when I was young. And they're like, what? I say, yes, agriculture pays. So we are doing a lot of talking to learners. I know a lot of interest for them. It's because it is an examinable subject and they're afraid of failing. So I'm trying to work out that so that they understand, apart from just passing your exam, this is something that can sustain you, your family, and also for the country. So we are doing a lot of talking to the learners, and especially those who are not embracing it. And I can assure you, many learners are very interested in farming. They enjoy it. For them, sometimes they do it as fun, but I'm trying to look at it like, is it fun just for school because you're doing it with friends, or is it something that you can continue even when you're on your own? So I'm doing a lot of such checks. We are doing with teachers a lot of talking to the learners to appreciate agriculture. But again, after listening to these meetings, and I'm happy I joined these meetings, it awakened something in me. I look at it differently. Even when I'm talking to the learners, I'm talking with them with the mind of this SDG. Because if we have to achieve it, and these are the people we are teaching now are the people who will be there in 2030, very active in their careers and all that. So I look at it with a different mind. Not only encouraging them to do agriculture and pass their exam, but it has another really core purpose: creating food, making sure the country is stable food-wise. So we're doing a lot of sensitization, a lot of talking to the children, creating awareness. And that is the only way that you can create interest, just like any other subject, that you have to create interest for the learners. Just to address that issue of attitude and creating the right interest for the learners to do a lot of farming. And sometimes I do it practically also. So when they see sister is also doing it and very interesting, and when they're out for holiday, I also do a lot of farming, they come in and they find a lot has been done in that farm. And they say, so who did this, sister? So they're like, oh, everybody can do farming. It's not a low-class job. It's something that everybody can do. So again, when we have meetings with parents, we talk about it. I know we are in an urban center where people do not have much land, but thanks to agriculture, it's coming with so many other forms of farming, and the learners are learning in class. They can use sacks to plant. So I'm happy when I hear children telling me, next to my house, we have done a sack of sukuma wiki and spinach, and we are planting this and that. So that really encourages. And I tell parents, when you see a child having interest with this, encourage them. Give them, provide whatever they need so that they can have that small sack there with even 10 crops they are growing, sukuma wiki, and you'll be able to feed as a family. So we also talk to parents, because also their parents, some of them did not go through agriculture system and also do not have interest. So it has to come with a lot of talking, a lot of creating awareness to people. Thank you.
And to start as young as possible, it sounds. I think there is natural wonder around plants. If we begin to observe them closely from a young age, they are quite magical. And the inspiration is there if we learn to look.
Sure.
Is there anyone else? Yes, Father Roque, please.
With regard to what Sister Anastasia has said, I think we have a different experience. The sound is very bad. And we have added the agriculture to our programs. And the young people are involved, and now they are asking to have more. I think what is most important is to offer the information, because many of them don't know. The most important is to offer the information when they are young. Because that the agriculture is something very important for their lives. So that's what we have done, to added something in our program so that they know what is that. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Roque. And Father Norbe, did you want to respond to any of the questions or comments?
Yeah. With regard to the first question, I think from my experience, it is very important to work with young people, new generations, about the importance of agriculture, and so that they know that the future is there. Because many people from the rural areas want to go to the city in order to find a job. But if we really think to the future, it's good that young people begin to think at staying in the rural areas. So there is a pedagogy there, education, and also we could say maybe also a university, so that they can develop agriculture and that they don't think only in going to the cities. So they need to go back to the rural areas. So I come from a rural area, and that's why I like it. And it's we know that the future of Colombia is there. Of course, we had the problem of the conflict and war, but the region is very rich. And if we teach the young generations about what is there and how to be how to share with others also. So I think it's very important to teach to the new generations about agriculture. And with regard to the second question, I think we have to go back to the common seeds and the old seeds that we are not genetically modified, and we know they are healthy, and I think we have to go back to that as old, the old times. And I think it's a challenge to me that how to go back to the natural seeds, not genetically modified. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Father Norbe. And in response to the question about how to continue sharing good practices, that is a good challenge from Sister Biddy Rose. And one way that we will at least be trying to follow up on these sessions of the lab will be to produce a report of some kind that synthesizes the important observations and ideas and practices that are being shared throughout these 6 days. And from there, we can think together about how to share those observations and practices, not only among ourselves, but also to try to put them in front of the eyes of our leaders in government, and perhaps to encourage them to learn from our experiences as well. And I hope that those who have been participating in our online training program throughout this year, I hope you will be at our final session on the 5th of August, because we will have some more discussion about how we can carry forward all of the lessons and the gifts from this experience that we have had together. So that will be our topic on the 5th of August. And now for a final word, a brief word, I would like to invite Sister Franca, daughter of Charity, to offer a last comment for us.
Thank you so much, Teresa, and thank you everybody for the lovely contribution we have shared. Thank you, Sister Beth, for the enlightenment you have given and the response on the genetically modified seeds. I just want to bring something to our consciousness. Like, we are talking about young people, teaching young people, and you know, these same young people are the ones that God will call to bring into the community to become religious persons in the future. And they come also with the attitude that farming is associated with the poor, and it's not something for the high class people. So in all this conversation that we are having, there is a call for me, I think, to really integrate the SDG, to mainstream it in the work of formation, so as to get our young people to understand it, to know it, and to go with the flow of it. I belong to the Congregation of the Daughters of Charity, and in the past, we were brought up by our beautiful Irish and British sisters. And most of the time, the mission was well supported, you know, by the countries where our missionaries came from. And as the aging entered, the sisters did their work at 80, at 90, they returned back faithfully to their countries. And we as young Africans, young Nigerians, were left to take up the leadership of the country and the formation of the sisters, training them in all-round areas. One of the things we as Nigerian sisters, Ghana, Burkina Faso, used to support ourselves was to ensure that in every local community, there was a good garden at the back of the house, where vegetables are cultivated, where the poor could also share when they come in. So there is the essence of bringing the consciousness of agriculture and farming and love for the environment to the formation program in order to encourage our younger followers to grow with that love, to integrate it in their system and know that it's part of their future. So that's all the comments I want to make. And I thank everybody for the contributions made. Thank you.
Thank you for that perfect closing and word of inspiration, Sister Franca. And I want to add my thanks to all who were our speakers today and for the engagement from the group of attendees. And I hope you will join us again at the same time tomorrow. We will have a similar session, and our theme for tomorrow will be Sustainable Development Goal number 13, which is action in response to the climate crisis. So please join us then. And thank you again for your excellent and enthusiastic participation today. Have a good day or night to all.
Yeah. Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Teresa. Thank you all for listening.
And big thanks to our interpreters as well.
It's lovely.
Gabriella,
Yes,
Dahlia,
yes.
Jessica, thank you so much.